It was a cold, gray morning in Moscow. Snow drifted slowly across the windshield of a beat-up taxi waiting near Vnukovo International Airport. Inside, the driver, a stocky Russian man, lit a cigarette, cursed the cold, and muttered about how there were too many foreigners in the city these days. His phone pinged. New ride request. Destination? The Kremlin. He scoffed. Always the rich ones. A few minutes later, a tall black man in a dark coat and simple gloves approached the taxi. No entourage, no suitcase, no fanfare, just calm, quiet presence. The driver narrowed his eyes. "You sure you got the right car?" he asked. "Kremlin. You?" The man nodded. "Yes, I have a meeting." The driver laughed. "Another African looking for gold in Russia? Kremlin doesn't take walk-ins." The man said nothing. He simply sat in the back seat, closed the door, and looked out into the snow-covered streets of Moscow. What the driver didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined, was that the quiet man in the back seat was Ibrahim Traore, president of Burkina Faso. And this wasn't just a visit. He had been personally invited by Vladimir Putin for a high-level closed-door meeting, but for the next 40 minutes, that taxi driver would treat him like nothing. The car rolled onto the icy roads of the city. Inside, the heat blasted. Russian rock music blared from the speakers. The driver didn't ask if it was okay. He didn't care. He kept glancing at the mirror, sneering. "So why are you Africans always coming to Russia now?" he asked. "Looking for something we don't have?" Still no answer. "What, no Russian? No English? You think because you wear long coat, you're important?" Still nothing. The driver hit potholes on purpose, mumbled things under his breath. "They send us immigrants, now they send us presidents too." At one point, the man in the back softly said, "Please slow down, the roads are icy." The driver snapped, "You don't tell me how to drive. You think this your country?" Still, no anger, no raised voice, just silence. Because what that man had was discipline. But then, they reached the Kremlin. Guards with earpieces stepped forward. The driver slowed down. Something was off. He looked at the gates, then back at the man. "You're really going in there?" No answer. Just radios crackling, movement, command. The car stopped meters from the entrance. Guards were already closing in. Confused, the driver looked back again. "You lied to me," he hissed. "Who do you think you are?" The man quietly reached into his coat, just to pay. But the driver snapped. "No, you tricked me." And then he lunged into the back seat, grabbed the man by the collar, and yanked him forward. That was his last mistake. In an instant, everything changed. Guards dropped their radios. One shouted, "Stand down! He's grabbing the president!" 3 Kremlin guards sprinted to the car. Seconds later, the driver was yanked backward, slammed to the ground, boot to his chest, handcuffed. "You just laid hands on the president of Burkina Faso. Are you insane?" One guard barked. The taxi driver froze, his face drained of color. President, he stammered. President Ibrahim Traore stepped out of the taxi, calm and collected. He looked down at the man who had insulted him, mocked him, manhandled him. And then he said just one line, "Sometimes it takes a hand on your throat to reveal the real you." He turned and walked toward the Kremlin. Inside, President Putin had already seen it all. Security footage, audio, the grab, the disrespect. He stood in silence and said to his aide, "Bring me a report." That driver doesn't work in Moscow again. In fact, he may not walk free in it either. When Traore entered the Kremlin, he didn't complain. He didn't rant. He shook Putin's hand. Putin apologized. "What happened outside, that is not Russia. That is one man's ignorance, and it will not go unpunished." Traore simply nodded. "It's not the first time I've been judged by how I dress," he said, "but it may be the last time he does it to anyone." The story might have ended there, but it didn't, because the moment went viral. A Kremlin staffer leaked the footage. It showed the taxi driver grabbing the president and being tackled by guards. Someone added subtitles, someone added music, and someone captioned it. They thought he was just another African, until the guards saluted him. TikTok, 1 million views in 3 hours. Twitter, outrage, applause, solidarity. In Africa, the video played on loop, from Ouagadougou cafes to village squares. They disrespected our lion, one man said, and he didn't even raise his voice. Even Russians chimed in. We are sorry, President Traore. That is not who we want to be. But this wasn't just about one man. It wasn't just about race. It was about how the world still sees African leadership, how respect disappears when power doesn't wear a crown. One Nigerian commentator said it best. They would never grab a European diplomat like that, but they thought this African was just a driver. But they were wrong, because that driver turned out to be the president of a rising African power. And the way he stayed silent while others shouted, that was what made the world pay attention. 2 days later, the world waited for him to speak. He didn't choose a podium inside the Kremlin. He didn't stand under flags or golden chandeliers. He stood outside the Burkina Faso embassy, in the cold, with 2 microphones, wearing the same coat he had on in that taxi, before a crowd of students, workers, and African families living in Russia. And then he spoke. Many have asked me why I stayed calm, why I didn't shout, push back, because I don't need to roar to be heard. The lion knows who he is, even in silence. What happened to me happens to my people every day. Judged, disrespected, ignored. Because they don't wear titles or carry flags or speak your language. But the world must understand something. Our value isn't in how loud we speak. It's in how long we stand. And then he ended with the words that lit up the continent. That man didn't just grab my collar. He grabbed the throat of every child told they don't belong, and that's why he fell. He didn't ask for revenge. He didn't ask for compensation. He left something more powerful behind. Dignity. Because when you carry yourself with truth, even in a stranger's car, you don't need a crown to remind the world who you are. If you believe the world should see African leaders for who they truly are, like, share, subscribe. Let them hear the roar, without the lion ever needing to raise his voice.